On today's show, Victoria announces EV subsidies, a target and a plan, so let's talk about it. G'day, my name's Chris and thanks for joining me. I cover things like renewable technologies like electric vehicles, battery storage, solar, wind and well more, particularly from an Australian perspective. If you're new to the channel, thanks for coming over here. Subscribe, helps the channel, it really does. Otherwise you want to go to the next level and get like early access, behind the scenes, polls, news and stuff that you just don't get here. Think about joining me over on Patreon, where from as little as $2.50 per month, you get this and a lot more. I'd like to say a big thank you to my producers, and that's Alan Burnt, Tessa Nagong, Ashley Hill and Nigel Farrier, and a big warm welcome to my gold level supporter Geraldine Tuckerman. Alright, well, with all that out of the way, they've got to get into this big news that came out on Saturday. Over on Twitter, Lily D'Ambrose, Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change, said this: $3,000 subsidies to get 20,000 more zero-emission vehicles on our roads. Target that half of all new cars sold in Victoria by 2030 will be zero-electric vehicles, more ZEV charging sites, 400 more ZEVs in government fleets. Well, I never. This is great news indeed. In fact, I think it's the first state and territory in Australia to announce an electric vehicle subsidy. I wonder why. Let's break this down and see what it will mean to Victorians, and then I'll share my 2 cents on why this is good, bad and well, meh. On Daniel Andrews' press release site, he spruiked these new initiatives, and I'm not going to bore you by reading it, nope, but here are some highlights. The $3,000 subsidy for zero-emission vehicles is part of the Victorian Government's plan to meet their target of net zero emissions by 2050 and support new jobs. This package will cost $100 million and will make EVs more affordable, meaning more charging infrastructure, and see an increase in electric cars in government and commercial fleets. The subsidy became available yesterday, and in its first year it will only cover 4,000 buyers, but then later on up to a total of 20,000. That is, so long as your electric vehicle costs less than $69,000. The government is also introducing a 2030 target that will see half of all new car sales be zero electric vehicles. Great! But how, people? How? VicGov says that it will set up an expert advisory panel to advise them on policies, programs and infrastructure required to ensure that they reach the 50% target by 2030. To improve driver confidence, the government's going to triple down on its charging infrastructure plan, with an investment of $19 million for more chargers on major highways, key tourist attractions and locations across regional and metropolitan Melbourne. This will mean an additional 50 charging points to the existing network of 24 sites. The government will also invest $10 million to add EVs to government fleets, starting with 400 vehicles in the next 2 years, in addition to a $5 million innovation fund that will work to support the uptake of electric vehicles in the commercial sector. And finally, in a stab at this guy, Mr. Angus Do-Nothing Taylor, he's our Federal Minister for Emission Reductions and Energy, who put out this piece of garbage. Yes, the FFS paper, which will mean CO2 levels will continue to rise, running costs for motorists will go up too, and our health will worsen. Yes, FFS, Angus. This line is for you, buddy. Victoria will also work with other states and territories towards a consistent approach to vehicle emission standards, given the lack of action by the Commonwealth. Ooh, that's gotta hurt a little bit, right? Maybe. Does he care? Probably not. So, time to get busy and stop being a puppet to the fossil fuel industry, okay? Alright, let's turn our attention back to this very important announcement. Whilst I appreciate and recognise that $3,000 off the price of an EV will mean more people can potentially buy one, I still don't understand why they're tooting their horns about the $100 million package, which has been made possible by a zero and lower emission vehicle road user charge that will be introduced to Parliament this week. Oh yes, the 2 cent per kilometre charge for plug-in hybrids and 2.5 cents per kilometre for pure electric cars. Yeah, the same one that over the lifespan of a car will equate to about $5,000 for an electric vehicle versus a $3,000 subsidy. It's kind of like they giveth Whoops, wrong way around. They giveth and they taketh. They do. It's just nonsensical again, isn't it? If you've ordered an EV and not yet received it, good news! Your purchase is now $3,000 cheaper. Cars that come under this cap include the MG ZS EV, was $43,990, now $40,990. Nissan Leaf, if it's still available, was $49,990, now $46,990. The Nissan Leaf Plus was $64,990, now $61,990. Hyundai Ioniq, $53,366, new price of $50,336. Mini Cooper SE was $59,990, now $56,990. Hyundai Kona was $67,204, now $64,204. And Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus was $68,094, now $65,094. Brilliant! And shout out to Tesla for recently dropping your price, because if it was the old price in that low 70 number, it wouldn't have qualified. And it makes me wonder, did they know something about this before we did? Maybe, but more than likely it's just related to the change in exchange rates, the Aussie dollar versus American dollar. Yeah, that's a whole other story. You want to see more about that? Go look up here. But I digress. This is great news and will mean significant things for people. First up, if you have ordered your car, what you'll need to do is just point out this new little bit of legislation to your dealer, and I'm guessing Tesla's going to actually be updating buyers who have got their car on order. And what will happen is this: they'll just change the total dollar amount owing when you take delivery of your car. Simple, very easily done. And if you want to see how it's going to look for Tesla, by the way, click on the link down below where you'll find information on this and a lot more. In Australia, our top 10 private vehicles tend to be four-wheel drives, from the meaty, expensive types to soft off-roaders that I would never like to take into the bush, through to several SUVs and small cars. And one thing you'll note that with almost all these cars, most cost less than $40,000. So this new EV subsidy might be what people need to shift them into EVs. For example, my car, the MG ZS EV, costing just a bit over $40,000. For the same amount of money, I could have bought like a similarly sized Mazda CX-5. But that car will cost me at least $2,000 per year in petrol and $10,000 over the lifespan of it. My car, on the other hand, I'm charging up with solar mostly. When I have to use grid electricity, it's renewably powered. So my running costs are significantly less. In fact, if you were to charge with electricity on your car, EVs run about at 1/3 the cost. Imagine that, your fuel bill cutting by 66%. That's how much money you're going to be saving, folks. And you're going to be emitting very little from your tailpipe. And yes, my keyboard warriors, you're saying, well, Chris, if you charge from the grid, you're using coal power. Yeah, you are, but it's recognized by several studies that emissions by electric vehicles using coal-powered electricity are 40% less. And as grids become greener and cleaner over time, like they are, we've got 25-30% right now in Victoria, heading towards 50% in 2026, I think it is. Electric vehicles just become greener every single day. Your ICE car, its CO2 debt is already established from where it began, all the way to its grave, and it only ever keeps going up. Electric vehicles, they just do the inverse of that. So, yes, please, if you haven't already, consider buying an EV. It's going to help the environment, it's going to help your family breathe better, it's make communities so much better. Oh, yeah, just please buy them. So my thoughts on this $3,000 subsidy, it's a good start and covers the lower end of the market. And I do wish that the grant was actually higher, maybe $5,000 or $10,000. That would be a kick in the never region for legacy car makers, because most car buyers buy because of price. Brand, features, yeah, but price first and foremost. So if you make a car that's suddenly less expensive than the petrol equivalent, people will jump to it. So I'm glad that, look, in this segment in Australia right now, we don't have a lot of choice with EVs, but people who are in the market for an i30 or that's a Hyundai i30, a Corolla, maybe even a RAV4, they now will be looking at these and they go, hey, this will actually help decarbonize our planet, improve the health of everyone here, mean health savings for everybody, which might then mean lower taxes. Maybe it won't happen, but we can dream. Now, let's look at the round of the package. More charging sites. Yes, please, especially if you're like an owner of a non-Tesla brand. There's a huge majority of this state without rapid charging infrastructure, and ideally you want them to be about 50 to 100 kilometers apart, just in case the one that you get to is broken down. Yeah, stories here if you want to go check that out. Best to always have a plan B and plan C. Okay, next was the push of EVs into fleets, both government and commercial. And whilst 400 over the next few years is a good start, I need to point out that the Victorian Government has more than 10,000 cars in its fleet, so 400 is just 4% of this figure. But Chris, stay positive mate. 400 new EVs into fleets will mean that drivers who have never ever ridden or driven in an EV before will now understand that, well, they're not slow, they do have range, and that they are fun to drive. And for commercial buyers, I'm not very sure by the way about what this looks like, getting them to have to buy electric vehicles will be significant because in Australia, 50% of new car purchases are fleet ones, meaning that downstream in 3-5 years time, when the end of lease occurs, they will then translate into the second-hand car market, making electric vehicles affordable for a lot more people. Brilliant. So by 2026, I think we'll see an explosion of electric vehicles on our road, as that's when the second wave will be occurring. Yeah? You can see it now, can't you? Synergistic? Yes. Will it work? For sure. You mark my words. And finally, the Victorian Government has pledged that by 2030, 50% of all new cars sold will be electric vehicles. Okay. So how? This is how it will play out, folks. Hey, Honda, Toyota, Subaru, 50% of your sales by 2030 have to be electric vehicles. Yeah? How you gonna make us? I'll get back to you. Targets are good, but you need detail and you need a plan. And many organisations who have actually advised government already have detailed this. They've done the research, they've given a framework to them. Yet, we're going to be going spending more taxpayer dollars on this stuff. And you know what? The simple answer is this. By 2030, any new car sold in Victoria has to be an electric vehicle. That's an ICE car ban, folks. And already around the country, we've seen places like the UK, most of Europe, some parts of Asia. They've got bans in 2030, 2035, 2040. And in response, car makers, General Motors, Holden, Volvo, many others have also said that they too will only be putting out electric vehicles at the same time. So what do you do to make 50% of purchases electric by 2030? Well, actually 100%. You just say there's an ICE car ban. It's simple. You don't need a target. You don't need a wishy-washy, I hope we get there, because at the end of the day, we don't need 50% emission reductions by 2030. No, it's too late for that. We should be starting now, or if not 5-10 years ago. Last time I looked, by 2030, we had to be at least at 75%, if not higher. So can I ask, any government official watching this, on behalf of me, my kids, friends and family, do more, be fierce, legislate the heck out of emissions. Industry and consumers will follow. You don't need to spend a single cent. I'm genuinely excited and glad that these initiatives have been put in place. But this week is an important one in Victoria because going to Legislative Council is a vote on whether or not to adopt an EV tax, the only one in the whole wide world that penalises people for cleaning the air that we all breathe. Introduced by Victorian Treasurer Tim Pallas, this new tax from July 1 will mean that people who drive plug-in hybrid vehicles will pay an additional 2 cents per kilometre, and for people who drive pure electric vehicles, 2.5 cents per kilometre. The system will mean that motorists will have to disclose to Vic Roads once per year their mileage, not a logbook as some people have claimed. Then your rego will have a new line on it saying how much you owe the Victorian Government. To quote Mr. Pallas, introducing a road usage charge now, before take-up increases substantially, ensures that everybody pays a fair and sustainable charge for the use and wear and tear on our road network, and means safer roads. Well, let me illustrate how unfair your tax is and how it doesn't address the fundamental issue here. These 3 cars, 1 petrol, 1 diesel and a hybrid, all fill up with fuel and do 15,000 kilometres a year. In fuel costs, they pay 10% GST on the total price of petrol and 42.3 cents per litre in fuel excise. That's a tax that supposedly goes towards road infrastructure. And yes folks, motorists are paying a tax on a tax, but let's not get into that issue today, okay? Despite politicians telling you that fuel excise helps build roads and maintain them, would it surprise you that they are lying? Wait, what? No, fuel excise and GST all go to central revenue, meaning a big pool of money that government can spend and share with states and territories. But I'll be nice here and I'll detail how Treasury reported road funding from its fuel excise. $20 billion in revenue from marine, rail, aviation, private road use and more was generated. $5 billion was spent on roads. But what's this? $8 billion given back to polluters in fuel credits? Yes, big polluters, heavy road users such as trucks, buses and mining companies don't pay for their fair share of roads. That doesn't seem right, does it? No. So Tim, what bit about fair are you referring to here? How the Victorian Government doesn't actually collect fuel excise? No, I'm confused. Let's take a look then at how your proposed tax is going to fix this. Okay, here are 2 cars, a plug-in hybrid and a pure electric vehicle. These 2 pay taxes, GST on electricity plus this new proposed road charge. As you can see, this legislation will mean that those who use cars that pollute the least will pay the most. Essentially, double. Now, my modelling is based upon EVs and plug-in hybrids filling their cars with electricity solely from the grid. And some will say, that's not realistic, Chris. Many people actually have solar and get free energy from the sun, so they're not paying for their fair share of roads, are they? But remember, in Australia, although we have the highest penetration of rooftop solar anywhere in the world, it's only 30% of homes who have it. So these costings are realistic for 70% of EV road users. At a time when we had the Victorian Government spending more than $1 billion on renewable energy projects and this new $100 million EV subsidy scheme, charging and fleet projects, I have to ask, why are you unfairly charging battery electric motorists? At just 0.7% of new car sales were EVs in 2020. In Victoria, there's only 7,000 electric vehicles. This tax on clean air will only generate $30 million over the next 3 years. Yet, you plan on using this money, to quote your words, to actually help with electric vehicle infrastructure and electric vehicle projects, not for maintaining roads. So what are you saying here? Is it one or the other? I'm still confused, dude. Nobody, as it turns out, is paying for their fair share of road maintenance. Victoria doesn't actually get fuel excise. They don't get GST either. That's up to the federal government to decide how they split up that pool of money. So this electric vehicle tax is just that. It's a tax on people who are trying their best to actually decarbonise our country. It's a tax on motorists who are improving the air in which we all breathe. And importantly, it's an unfair tax that will dissuade buyers from getting an electric vehicle, even with that $3,000 carrot on offer. If you can, this week, Tomorrow, Tuesday, there's going to be a march, a bit of a demonstration outside Parliament House to protest this. So if you can get there, please do so. If you're interested in helping out, talk to your local Member of Parliament. Email them. I've left a copy of a letter that you can email your Member of Parliament to let them know that you do not support this tax. And importantly, in turn, you do not support your Member of Parliament. They like getting re-elected, so hopefully that helps in some way. And most importantly, talk to friends, family, and work colleagues about this. Most people, the first thing they say to me is that, oh, you drive an EV, you don't pay for your fair share of roads. And I just point out to them all this stuff, not to mention the fact that there's actually a benefit. I think it's about $1,000 and something, I forget what it is, over the lifespan of an electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine one. I've talked about it previously, but I didn't want to get too long into this video. You understand what I'm going with this, don't you? Anyway, I think that's enough for today's episode. I do hope that this EV tax doesn't go ahead, and be interested to see next Monday what I report on. And I do hope also that this new subsidy that's coming in will go a long way to actually getting motorists into electric vehicles. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It does help the channel. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a little comment. Tell me what you've done in this space. You want to support the channel and keep me going because, you know, it costs time and stuff, money. So, yeah, it's expensive. Think about supporting me over here on Patreon, where from as little as $2.50 per month, that's like 60 cents per week, you get early access to news, polls, and information that you just don't get here. And most importantly, be good and be green.